the standards, so they have to sign off on that. These pump stations when they're transferred, and there are a number of things like that. But it's not. But we have to get assurance from the developer and see the sign off by the city that they have in fact looked at whatever they've looked at. It could be the roads, sidewalks, anything that they have to be constructed and designed to certain standards. So that's part of the process. So that it's not just, oh yeah, it's out there, okay. There is a formal process to ensure that the developer's in compliance, and then when it's turned over to us, that we have the facilities and the amenities in a condition that we're willing to accept.
Yeah, to expand on that, we have approximately, 21 retention detention ponds. 6 of them are in phase 1, and we are working with the city right now as to how we are to maintain those. And we have contracts already out for the other 18 or so to maintain those about 3 times a year or so. So we are working on that, and we're dealing with the city and sometimes Hall County.
John, that one other thing, there is a cost associated with that, and that's also been identified. How much does that cost to maintain these over a period of time?
That was really the biggest part of my question.
Yeah.
Can't you use that in the negotiation?
I'm sorry?
Can that be used in the negotiation on the settlement?
Yes, it can, but that, just that, in the broadest scope, that's been addressed in there. That has to be part of what we agree to as being satisfactory before we accept that.
John or Bob?
I think one of the agencies that is going to have to be included in that process is the Army Corps of Engineers, the turnover of the marina. That's going to be a very important aspect. I don't know what we've been doing about that, but I think that is a third party that's going to be deeply involved with that.
That's what I was going to say. Sorry. Brian?
I'm saying goodbye to this board, so I know how we worked over the past 2-3 years. I've tried to be a champion on controlling the cost of living here. My primary concern as this board turns over, not just this coming year, but in the years to follow, is what commitment are you willing to put forward to control the cost of homeowner association dues, the use of assessments, any of that. We are a nonprofit corporation. We only spend what we take in. And that can be a struggle. But what commitment are you making to control the cost of living here over the next year or beyond?
Jim?
Well, we have an outstanding treasurer, Debbie Jones, as if she's here. Debbie Ellis, excuse me. She controls all our finances, and Sid's helping her out with that as well. But as we expressed at the town hall meeting, the charter provides us with the authority to borrow X amount of dollars based on our prior operating budget. But I express that even though we have that authority, we will not utilize that authority without going to the community and seeing if they really want us to do that and for a good purpose. We will do studies. We're working on like the sales office right now, doing something with that, or not doing something with that. We're going to study that issue, because no matter what happens with that issue, if we do something with it, it will cost. How much? We have to deal with possibility of assessments, increased dues, and all that. So we have to get the pulse of the community. Are they willing to absorb that? And so I promise everybody that I will never vote on any major financial issue without, asking the community and getting input.
John?
My answer to the question is that I'm much more concerned about what is the value for the dollar that we spend. And how does it help us to move toward some larger goal, some vision, some place that we want to get to? And that's how to evaluate where to spend money. But again, my short answer is that the evaluation of what do we get for that dollar, what's the value of that dollar, and I think that needs to be in conversation with a lot of folks. So I'll leave it at that.
Bob?
Well, I think we need to establish a set of values as a community that we want to see implemented in the resources we have in our common areas. And we need to do that before we make decisions. As an advisory committee, we had a couple of strategic planning sessions where we set a context for the not only the common area and the goals that we have for that, but also the financial aspect of it as well. You always have limited funds, and you have to decide where those funds should go as a community. And you also need a guiding framework in order to establish that, so that the conversation doesn't start all over again every time you want to do it. You shouldn't have to start that conversation. It ought to be an ongoing conversation with an agreed upon, for the most part, agreed upon context to use in order to begin the conversation and then spend the money. We can assume we'll have fixed resources. The other thing I would say is that the Crestwood LL Community Fund is there to support the community in many of these areas. So I think reaching out to them to support something that they feel is important for the community might be a way around having limited resources.
Larry?
I appreciate what you all said, because it makes a lot of sense, that you would go to the community before you spend any large sum of money. But I believe on January 1st, the charter changes where the board can borrow up to $750,000 without a vote from the community. And in respect to what the treasurer said at the town hall meeting, we couldn't borrow any money now until the debt is paid. But assuming the debt will be paid, and we will be debt-free, then I'd like each of you to respond. Do you believe $750,000 in a unilateral vote without participation? I know you all wish to have residents participate, but the law changes on January 1st. You don't have to. So how does each board member feel about that? Do you think $750,000 with a unilateral decision by 7 people speaking for 1,700 is a reasonable amount of money? And if you don't think it is, what do you think is reasonable?
The only thing that I think is reasonable, we have to have a borrowing authority in case some emergency happens in the community that we have to take care of, like a tornado hits or something else, and we have to respond immediately to fix whatever damage was done. So we have to have some kind of borrowing authority. Now, putting a figure on whether $750,000 is it, no, I don't particularly like that, and that's what we have a charter for. If it's something that the community thinks is too much, then we vote and lower that borrowing authority. But you do have to have some borrowing authority to cover emergency situations. We have hurricanes, and recently, today, I didn't feel it, but we had an earthquake, a 4.4 earthquake. And you know, that could have damaged our retention ponds, our retaining walls, our pump stations, you know, any number of things could happen on an emergency basis. And so we have to have some kind of authority to cover that without going to the community and delaying the fix.
Larry, I would echo much of what Jim just said about having the opportunity to find those funds if we needed to respond to an emergency situation. Again, the cap at $750,000 is indeed that, a cap, not to exceed that much. Probably, from my point of view, the most important element in having that opportunity to borrow that much money is the way in which the community holds the board accountable for that decision, whether it be $1 or $750,000 to be borrowed. And one of the question marks I have, as a resident, is what is the process for holding the board accountable for those kinds of actions and decisions? I don't know what that is, but as a board member, I would certainly be interested in having conversations about what it should look like if there's not one that's already there. Thanks.
I agree with what John just said. I think the board needs to be held accountable for any borrowing they do, and that part of that accountability is a structure for the community to say, this is very important. We need to borrow $250,000 to do this right now. Parking comes to mind. There's always a perennial problem. I guess it really depends on what the values are there and whether the community is willing to support a board decision to borrow money. It is not one to be taken lightly, and the board should be held accountable for it.
Oh, Reed?
Yeah,
Sorry.
just as a resident, triggers. I'll get the drill right. As a resident, this has triggered a thought in my mind. We're all homeowners, we have cars, we have insurance. What is the position of the developer with all the construction? I'm sure that they've got some type of insurance policies. Will those be passed to us, or will we have to go out and get our own insurance? Like you talk about the ponds, a disaster, just from our surveys of the neighborhood, we know that there's 26 huge retaining walls in the community. It could happen someday, but hopefully not, but one of those caves in, would we have insurance to help us cover the cost of that with a deductible? I don't know. I figured,
Yes, I can answer that. We do have a very large policy with an umbrella. We have higher deductibles to take care of keeping the insurance policies within reason. We have all levels of coverage, volunteer, liability. The only thing that in this conversation brought up today is earthquake. So I've got to make myself a note to go back and say, that wasn't far up the road. This building will cost us 10 to 15 million to reconstruct. What would it cost us? And is it worth it? So he had a policy that covered himself more than it covered the association, but it was developer weighted. He finally agreed to allow me to go out and shop the insurance. I was able to save about $35,000 on that policy because it took him off of there and put it back onto the association. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Ron?
It's a good question. It's probably not so much applicable now because we're reasonable folks here. We're not going to go out and do that. But the question then becomes, what happens in the out years if you get board members who would be willing to do that without consulting the community, there are a couple things you can do. One is certainly change the charter. It requires, so it's a very complicated procedure, but it can be done. Or if you feel that the board member is not acting is not meeting his or her fiduciary responsibility and is acting improperly, the board member can be removed. It requires community involvement to do that, but that can happen. So there is some control over that. It's just a more tedious process. But it's a good point. Early on now, if we're very tight-fisted, Deb Ellis is not going to spend a dime without rolling it over her hands 2 or 3 times, which is a good deal. To put a number to this, right now we are at about 62% of our reserve requirements, at about $400,000. By the end of the year, we would probably be at 82%. And that's in the state of Georgia, where the requirement for reserve funds is 0. Legally, it's 0. You don't have to have it. We've been maintaining it because it's the right thing to do. So I think the board, past boards, and this board and future boards will act responsibly from a fiscal and a fiduciary standpoint so that we don't get ourselves in trouble, that we don't spend frivolously or just go out and borrow for something that it does not have support. I think we're on safe ground now, but in the out years, it's a good point. How do we know that someone might not think the same way 5 years from now? I mean, that could be the case.
Any other questions? Mr. Burke?
This is going to be a different question. Maybe one of them can answer it, or maybe you can. I've been there a year and a half, and of course, as we all know, we all hear all kinds of things from the neighbors, from the community and all. And we find out some of it's true, some of it's not true. We just completed a November election, which has been very controversial throughout the United States about things not going the way they're supposed to be going. I was told that, of course, each of us, when this election comes up in January, each homeowner will have an individual vote. But I was told that Bob Rademacher will have a vote for each house that is unsold. Is that correct?
That is correct. Your governing documents spell that out.
Lots and lots.
Lots and homes, so far. Just because there's not a home on that lot. Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I just have a comment. I used to be on a board in San Diego, and I just want to thank you all for participating. I've heard a lot about transparency of the board, but I also want to just acknowledge that it really takes the community being involved. I look around, I don't see these seats full. That kind of concerns me a little bit at a meeting like this. When you come to a meeting, and a board meeting, and they're conducting business, that's where transparency is. And I know from my experience being on a board in the past that when people don't come to meetings and they don't participate and it's all hearsay, that's where the problems really start. So I just want to encourage all members of our community to participate, and I thank you people for all that you're doing, and especially with the trees. When I was on the board in San Diego, we didn't address those trees early on, and later on, we had one tree fell over, it was $40,000 to replace it. We had another one that broke up all the foundation underneath the building. Those are very real issues, so thank you.
You can come to all 4 meetings if you like. How's that sound straight?
May I follow up on Mr. Burke? I'm going to throw this out there and correct me if I've misrepresented it, but yes, Mr. Rademacher Coulter does have 1 vote per lot or unsold house. That includes all the model homes, includes the sales center. I think that the number of votes that he will be casting in this upcoming election in January is somewhere around 60 to 70 votes per candidate.
Correct.
Right, correct. That's correct. So I just wanted to add that to the answer.
And I'll expand on that just a little bit more. Until November of this year, you're a Class B, he was a Class A. The documents state that during the time that he is a Class A member, he holds a vote for every vote that you can cast, plus one. So if 400 votes were cast, he could cast 400 plus one. That's where a lot of this was. We didn't really have an election. Yes, you had an election. He voted his votes the democratic way, according to the documents, and that was the result. It wasn't a rig, it wasn't anything out of the way. He did exactly what that charter prescribed that he could do, and he did it. Any comment?
You mentioned he's a Class B right now, and he'll be.
I'm sorry,
Yeah, he's a Class B now, he'll be switching to Class A.
I would like to address what that young lady out there said, that in my experience, the people that do the most complaining are the ones that never come to any of the meetings. And they hear rumors, and we keep telling everybody at all the meetings, if you want to squelch a rumor, contact a member of the board. We are at your service. And then the rumor will be squelched. Thank you.
Let me make one more comment.
Okay.
We've got sort of the story on his votes. Having been on the board for a long time, Mr. Rademacher never made any recommendations to people. He came to the board first and says, where do you want me to put my votes? So
Okay, that's true.
So the board does have some culpability in any election that we do have, regardless of how many votes he's got.
Okay. If there's no other questions, we will
We didn't hear that back there.
Explain what he just said.
say, turn it around and face it, Jim.
Okay. The developer has X number of votes left. We don't know what it'll be, 60, 80, whatever. He can put those against whoever. His practice, as long as I've been here since the first AC, is he goes to the board, to the AC, and says, all right, I need to put my votes here. Where do you want me to put them? And the board tells him where to put them. Now, he can still veto or say no on somebody, but that's the process. So the board does have some help and some culpability in any election we have, regardless of the number of votes he has.
Right, but based on what Gary said, last year he had significant influence, this year he has less.
Right.
As long as
That's different.
you tell all your friends to come out and vote. Because last year, the residents, there was less of a percentage of resident votes than there should have been. Residents just didn't, all the residents didn't vote last year.
There was a healthy number, it was over half.
Yeah.
What is the mechanism going to be for voting? Because like, I'm not going to be here on the 7th and 10th.
7th, 8th, and 9th, the voting booth on the Crestline website, you'll see an actual memo coming out today with direction and explanation. We will vote electronically. For those people who have a capacity not to be able or doesn't have a computer, a paper ballot will be provided to those people. But we have a computer in the lobby that we will assist anyone getting logged on. But if you're homebound or health reasons prevent you from, and you don't have a computer or coming down here, we will get you a paper ballot and it will be counted just like the rest of them. Talk to these folks. They've got about 28 minutes before the next session begins. And thank you for coming.
Thank you for saying that. Good job.
Yeah, I never know.
There, I got a question last night. I don't know the answer. And you don't have to vote on it. That's true, that's still.
One person, one vote.
I'll say on my street, there's a light that shouldn't have been. There's like lights way down at the end, and there's like no lights halfway down.
May not be able to give you an answer, but what we do is city on the line.
Okay.
So, that may stay, so after the first of the year, to get them to respond. But I'll go look at it, I can tell you.
Yeah, take a look, because I was driving, I've noticed that area is pretty dark, and then I was driving around looking at how often lights were. And it seems like if you're looking out there, it seems like there should be a light on the side of the street.
I'll look at it. Send me an email, remind me. I'll go over it all the time.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Now, you may get late.
That's what we do, right?
We've been talking.
It may not be a good decision by you today, right? But it's too late for you. All right.
Yeah, you guys. So, did great.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Great job.
Thank you.
It was a little disappointing.
Dan talking about, I said, I don't have a problem. At least my form.
Well, you can beat yourself coming and going, and that's true. But no, I think in retrospect, we probably haven't tapped into the committee. I mean, it functioned and they're doing it, but we could use it more without having to go to ad hoc. We have existing functioning groups right now, and we should probably do better at that. But
It all worked out. And the thing is, like you say, we're going to become our own village here. And the thing is, it's not like folks sitting out there self-development. You got your next door neighbor. You got somebody.
we live here too.
Yeah, so you're not going to spend.
Thank you for your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.
It's going to be a long day, all the way to 8 o'clock.
I haven't had one of these since my dissertation defense.
Well, you probably sat through these things all the time, or at least observe them and critique them.
Oh,
At the corporate level.
yeah, the real one.
What is successful meeting?
But I was mostly the fly on the wall.
So you just sat in the corner and took notes and observed?
And then I went back and said, here's what I think.
Just so you all know, there's out of time.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, a minute more, so.
I got it.
All right. So, you don't have to judge, you have time to
But I did it in front of the mirror, it was 5.5.
I thought mine was about a little over five, but it turned out.
Well, about 9:26. I was showing them theirs the time so that everyone knows about how they were running.
Ron, it's wordy. Got wordy. He got wordy.
So, I mean, Yeah, you can do
I'll circle it up.
it. Might be too tough.
That's useful, thank you. That's helpful.
And I tried to capture all the questions